Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're walking in Memphis. The topic of this Walking in Memphis, USWA from August 23rd, 1997. Now before we get into this, if you want to watch the video that I reviewed for this show, there's a link right here in the description. If you haven't seen my shows before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. For the Memphis shows, I go between commercial break to commercial break, so a whole segment because there's a lot that happens in between those. We grade that all as one thing. That being said, let's jump right in. First thing we see, it's an empty studio. They tell everybody to go outside. Outside, we see the cops are out there with Billy Joe Travis and Brian Christopher. We're told that Billy Joe Travis attacked Christopher. I'm going to condense and not put this in every little bit because they kept going back to pieces of this during the show, so I'm going to put it all up here up front. They kept showing, and this was a good thing. I thought it was interesting. It definitely was a good way to sell their feud, with Christopher getting pulled out of the car by Billy Joe Travis, them getting arrested, all of that stuff. I'm giving that for an opening, and for all the segments that talk about it through the show, I'm giving that a 4. Next up, we go into the first match of the show. We get Doug Gilbert versus Bulldog Reigns. I really like this. I like Doug Gilbert a lot. I think there's more they could have done with him. He kind of got a reputation for being dangerous, which is what his nickname was, and being unreliable and a little bit of a loose cannon. No disrespect to Brian Pillman. I really enjoyed this match. I enjoyed Doug Gilbert. He does pick up the win here. Immediately afterwards, he goes to cut a promo. This is where people kind of differ on Doug Gilbert. I like his promo styles. There's a lot of people that I've heard that don't like his promo, and I think a lot of it is they compare him to Eddie Gilbert. He's a lot different wrestler and a different character than Eddie Gilbert. It's almost like comparing Terry and Dory Funk. Dory is more subdued, where Terry is more wild and crazy. And I think that's where a lot of people where Gilbert takes the biggest hit as he's compared to his brother so much. And I get it. If you were to ask me who's my favorite of the two, it's Eddie Gilbert by a lot. But Doug Gilbert, I think, was still pretty good. For that segment and the interview and the match, I'm giving that a 4. Next up, we get an interview with Dutch Mantell, Rod Price, and Doomsday. Doomsday, fun fact, is going to end up being Kane a little bit later on, and he is just coming off of the run as the fake Diesel, which we'll cover that here in another second. This was Dutch talking about having the championship and being willing to defend it against anybody but Lawler. A pretty great segment. I've talked about it at length here. Dutch is a great talker. He's not one of the people that gets thought of as being a great talker, but he really is. He's one of the, in my opinion, him and Eddie Gilbert are my two favorite Memphis wrestlers of all time. I just talked about Eddie, and most of it's because of how they could talk you into the ring, and then when they got in the ring, they could back it up by being two of the better performers that you'll ever see. I thought this was fantastic. It leads us right into a match. Doomsday versus Mike Samples. Doomsday makes quick work of Mike Samples. For all that, I'm giving that a 4. Next up, we come from our next segment. Jerry the King Lawler comes out, says that in a couple weeks they're going to be forced to make a time change. And I don't know how much of this is true and how much of it was that their ratings were slipping at the time. The USWA, sadly, was on its dying days at this point. And they were going to move from Saturday morning to Saturday at midnight. And the reason that Lawler gave is because Bill Clinton had signed some kind of an act where all over-the-air television channels had to show children's shows on Saturday mornings, or had to show a 3-hour block of children's shows. I don't know how much of that is true. I don't remember that being a thing. It could have been. I mean, at the time I was only about 20 years old. I would not have really paid attention to something like that. In the area I lived, I didn't get USWA on Saturday morning. It came in later on one of the sports channels would replay it. So I didn't get it the day it actually aired. So I would see this later anyway. ECW, which was local to me, played at 2 a.m. WWE, they did have a Saturday show still, but it was pretty much irrelevant. WCW didn't have a Saturday morning show at the time, so I don't know if that would have been something I would have known about, to be honest with you. So he could totally be telling the truth, or it could have just been falling ratings that caused the move. From that, we get a phone interview with Tommy Dreamer. He's talking about he's about to have a match with Dutch Mantell for the championship, which Dutch Again, they talk about the rumors that Dreamer wants to take the championship and bring it to ECW. This was at the tail end of the ECW versus USWA feud. It had already met its apex, and this was a little bit after that. Still, I believe Dreamer was doing some shots here as a favor to Lawler. I'm pretty sure they love each other. So that was pretty good. After that, we get Dutch Mantell coming back out with Rugged Ron Price and Doomsday again. Or actually, he's called the California Stud Ron Price at this point. They do another promo talking about Dreamer. And again, just really good stuff. I love Dutch Mantell. This leads us right into a tag team match. We get Rex King and Paul Diamond, which for now on, and I should have done this here, I'm going to call that tag team King Diamond if they ever come up. And they're going up against the Spellbinder and Rick Titan. Spellbinder you may have seen on Raw early days as Phantasmo or Fantasio, something like that. He was a guy that had kind of a mime/magician gimmick. This was a little bit, he evolved it a bit here. I always enjoyed him. I liked his gimmick. I thought it was, even with the hokiness of when it was hokey, it still felt good, I guess. It was still entertaining to me. And he's teaming up with Rick Titan, which if you're not familiar with Rick Titan, that's the fake Razor Ramon. So on the same show, we have the fake Razor and the fake Diesel. They reference that he wants to leave that gimmick, although he's very much still dressed like he's Razor, and he's still carrying some of the Razor mannerisms here. Spellbinder and Rick Titan pick up the win. I'm giving this one a 3. I thought it was pretty good, not great. Overall, the match, in my opinion, took the segment down because the Dutch interview, the Lawler interview, and the Dreamer interview were all pretty good. Just the match was a little bit underwhelming. Next up, we have the Scorpion versus Rod Price. Rod picks up a pretty decisive win here, which leads us right into the crew again, Dutch Mantell, Rod Price, and Doomsday. They go into a promo right away. Again, they're pretty much dominating the middle part of this show, which is kind of something I picked up on a lot of these USWA shows, where one faction or one person will dominate a large segment of it. I don't know if it's because the roster was so thin at this point, or it's just something that they found worked for their fans. For that, I'm going to give that segment a 3. I thought it was pretty good. Again, the match is what took the quality down a bit in my opinion, but still pretty good though. From that, our next segment, we start off with 2 local sorority girls talking about a car wash later. I'd love to know what happened to these 2 girls, and if they tell their children or even maybe their grandchildren now that they were once on USWA Memphis television. And if they pull out this videotape to show them, that would be awesome to know. Are these 2 women just 2 girls were huge fans of the company and they had a sorority that they joined, so they came back for this? Are they daughters of famous wrestlers at the time? Who knows? I'd love to know what happened to them. If you know, let me know in the comments. If you're one of the girls on this, please definitely let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear from you. I think that'd be awesome. Maybe even we'd set up a Skype call or something talking about the experience that we could record here. But anyway, I digress. From that, we go into a Jerry Lawler promo where he's talking. Dutch Mantell at the time was calling himself the Icon, and he talks about who's an icon when he has a toy being made, which he brings up the WWF toy of himself. This was early in the Bone Crushing Jack days, so he's got, I think it's like series 2 or 3. The Bad Guys line, he's one of the series. Pretty cool toy. I had it back then at the time. I thought it was, it was a pretty good depiction of him. From that, we get James Beard coming out, who was serving as a de facto commissioner, talking about the Billy Joe Travis and Brian Christopher incident, which brings out Brian Christopher, who pretty much is angry as he should be. And this is where Brian Christopher really shines. He conveys whatever emotion you want to. If you want him to be goofy, he's going to be goofy. If you want him to be stoic, he'll be stoic. If you want him to be unhinged and crazy, he'll be unhinged and crazy. If you want him to be angry and seeking vengeance like he is here, he's absolutely knocks it out of the park every time, no matter what you gave him. It's sad that he's looked upon as kind of a comedic joke wrestler, because he really was a great wrestler. Even the Grandmaster Sexay stuff was really good in my opinion. For all this segment, and he's pretty much yelling at Beard that he wants a match with Billy Joe Travis, who was picketing at the time and not officially part of the USWA roster. For all that, I'm giving that a 5. The 2 promos and just the intrigue with the 2 girls from the car wash made it the to me, the most fun portion of the show this week. I really enjoyed that. Now, coming off of that, we get a match. The next segment is basically just one match. We get Buster Johnson versus Jerry the King Lawler. This is short, not much here. Lawler does pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 3. Like I said, it was short. It was not a lot to write home about. Coming from that, we get a Stephen Dunn and Flash Flanagan going up against PG-13. This is a pretty good match. The team of Rex King and Paul Diamond, King Diamond, come out and interfere, causing it to be a no contest. For that, I'm giving that segment a 3. Then we come back, we end the show on the final segment. We get James Beard coming out. He announces that he's signed a match with Billy Joe Travis versus Brian Christopher, although it's not going to be sanctioned and it's going to be outside of the arena for the next show. I guarantee they did this and they said it was for free so they could drum up ticket sales. You know, you see that match, you get excited, you want to go in and watch the show. It would be in the parking lot of their next show. Pretty good way to go off the air, tie in everything that they were talking about with Billy Joe Travis and Brian Christopher all through the show. All in all, I thought this was a pretty good show. I wouldn't say it was great. I'd probably, if I'm going to rate it, I'm going to say it's a 3 overall. Some good stuff on here, some great stuff on here. A lot of the promos are really good. The match quality, in my opinion, is what tanked this a bit. And usually I'm pretty forgiving on the match quality, grading it to the era that it's in. Although here it just doesn't, even watching squash matches, I could give a squash match a high card. Here it kind of felt like the matches were going through the motions, if that makes sense to you. Like no one was really trying to give any effort. And for that, it kind of gave it a little bit of an uneven feel. All the segments, all the interviews, all the stuff outside of the ring was fantastic. The matches in the ring, a little bit lackluster. And by a lot of really great wrestlers. So, like I said, for that, I'm giving the show a 3. Let me know what you think. Let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. And if you made it all the way to the end, I know he's in a little bit of trouble right now, but I always liked the Kane character, and I could separate the man from his politics. I don't know that I agree with all of his politics. I haven't followed him enough to know. If I do, I know he said some pretty strange stuff on Twitter. I won't get into that. Like I said, I don't follow him enough to know all of his views, but I did like the Kane character. So if you made it to the end, let's put Doomsday in the comments for Kane. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and we've been walking in Memphis.